Some children don't remember what it felt like to be careless. Not because they were disciplined, but because carelessness was never safe. They learned early that being aware was better than being innocent. That watching quietly was better than asking questions. That growing up fast wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. If this feels familiar, it's because growing up too fast doesn't leave loud memories. It leaves patterns, reflexes, a constant sense of responsibility that follows you into adulthood without asking permission. From the outside, these children are often admired. They're called mature, wise, reliable. But inside, it feels like standing guard over something fragile, a family, a parent, an emotional atmosphere, while pretending you don't feel the weight of it. Childhood doesn't disappear in one moment. It erodes. It erodes when a child realizes that crying makes things worse, when expressing fear adds stress instead of comfort, when silence becomes a form of protection. You weren't born emotionally controlled. You learned it. Many children who grow up too fast become experts at reading rooms. They sense tension before it's spoken. They adjust themselves automatically. They become small in their needs and large in their awareness. This isn't sensitivity, it's survival. Psychology often talks about big trauma, but what shapes these children is something quieter, micro-trauma. It's the accumulation of moments where a child feels, I should handle this. I shouldn't add to the problem. I need to be strong right now. Over time, strength stops being a response and starts becoming an identity. There's a hidden exchange happening here. The child trades expression for stability, play for predictability, needs for approval. And often, the reward sounds kind. You're so mature for your age. But what that praise really means is, you don't disrupt the system. This creates a powerful belief that sinks deep into the nervous system. Love is conditional. Safety depends on performance. Rest must be earned. So the child adapts. They become independent too early, emotionally regulated before they're emotionally supported, responsible before they're protected. Inside them forms what many describe as an empty well. They give support, reassurance, understanding, but no one asks how full they are. Eventually, the emptiness feels normal. This is why, as adults, people who grew up too fast often feel confused by their own reactions. They feel anxious when life is calm, uncomfortable when someone takes care of them, guilty when resting. Their body doesn't trust peace, because peace was never familiar. Responsibility was. Another wound lives quietly here, ambiguous loss. It's the grief of something that was never fully there to begin with. You didn't lose a parent. You didn't lose a home. You lost a childhood that never had space to exist. The version of you that could be messy, dependent, uncertain. Because that loss is invisible, it often goes unnamed. So instead of grieving, you keep functioning. You become the strong one, the calm one, the one people lean on. But strength without softness eventually turns into exhaustion. People who grew up too fast are often incredible in crises. They know how to hold it together, how to stabilize chaos. But when life slows down, they don't know where to place themselves. Joy feels unfamiliar. Rest feels wrong. Needing feels dangerous. Their nervous system learned one rule early: stay alert. And society rewards this. We admire resilience without questioning what demanded it. We confuse adaptation with character. But here's the truth that changes everything. Growing up too fast was not who you are. It was what you had to do. You didn't become emotionally restrained because you lacked depth. You restrained yourself because depth wasn't safe.
You didn't become independent because you didn't need anyone. You became independent because relying on others didn't feel reliable. These behaviors weren't flaws, they were solutions. But solutions meant for childhood survival can quietly become prisons in adulthood. And once you see that, once you realize that your seriousness, your hyper-responsibility, your emotional control were learned under pressure, a question begins to form. A question that doesn't have an easy answer, but refuses to stay silent. If all of this was built to help you survive back then, what happens when survival is no longer the only requirement? That's where the real story begins.
That's where the real story begins. Because the moment you realize that survival shaped you, not defined you, something loosens inside. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to let a little air in. For many people who grew up too fast, healing doesn't start with confidence. It starts with confusion, with noticing how uncomfortable stillness feels, how unfamiliar it is to not be needed, how silence doesn't feel peaceful, it feels empty. This is the nervous system slowly stepping out of survival mode and not knowing what to do next. When you grow up too fast, your body learns to stay alert. Muscles hold tension without asking. Breathing stays shallow. Emotions stay managed, not felt. Even in safe moments, there's a quiet readiness, as if something might go wrong and you need to be prepared. So when life finally becomes calmer, the body doesn't celebrate, it panics. This is why rest can feel unbearable, why slowing down creates guilt, why joy feels fragile, like it might be taken away if you trust it too much. Your system learned that calm never lasted, responsibility always returned. Understanding this is important because it removes the shame. You're not broken for struggling with peace. You're not ungrateful for feeling uneasy when things are good. Your body is simply loyal to an old job it hasn't been told it can stop doing. Healing, then, is not about becoming someone new. It's about gently updating the rules your nervous system still lives by. And that process is slow, because the part of you that grew up too fast doesn't trust sudden change. It learned that stability comes from control, not surrender. So healing often starts in very small ways. It starts when you notice how quickly you take responsibility for other people's emotions, when you apologize for needs before you've even expressed them, when you feel more comfortable giving than receiving. Instead of judging these patterns, healing asks something quieter: curiosity. Not what's wrong with me, but what did this protect me from? Because every survival strategy has a story behind it. Your independence once protected you from disappointment. Your emotional control protected you from chaos. Your seriousness protected you from being dismissed. These patterns deserve respect, not erasure. But they don't deserve to run your entire life. One of the hardest shifts for people who grew up too fast is learning that they don't have to earn rest anymore, that they don't need to be useful to be worthy of care, that their value doesn't disappear when they stop performing strength. This can feel terrifying, because when strength has been your identity, softness feels like disappearance. When responsibility has kept you safe, letting go feels like danger. So the body resists. You may feel anxious when you say no, guilty when you choose yourself, uncomfortable when someone shows up for you consistently. This isn't failure, it's grief. Grief for the childhood you didn't get to have. Grief for the version of you that had to grow up without permission. Grief that finally has space to surface now that you're safer.
And grief doesn't arrive politely. It shows up as irritability, exhaustion, numbness, sudden sadness without a clear reason. This is the empty well being acknowledged for the first time. Healing begins when you allow yourself to feel that emptiness without rushing to fill it with productivity or strength, when you stop immediately reaching for usefulness to avoid discomfort. Slowly, something changes. You start to notice moments where you don't fix, moments where you don't explain yourself, moments where you rest without justification. These moments feel small, but they are revolutionary, because they teach your nervous system a new truth. Nothing bad happens when you stop holding everything together. Another important part of healing is learning that needing others doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. The child who grew up too fast learned that dependence was risky, but adulthood offers new kinds of connection, safer ones, chosen ones. Learning to trust them takes time. It often begins with letting someone witness your fatigue without turning it into a joke, letting someone help without immediately planning how to repay them, letting care land without questioning it. This is how the inner child begins to reappear, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, in moments of rest, in curiosity, in play that feels awkward at first. You may feel younger in unexpected ways, less certain, less composed. That's not regression, that's recovery. Because the child inside you didn't disappear, they adapted, they learned to wait. And now, as an adult, you are finally in a position to offer them something they never had: choice. Choice to rest, choice to feel, choice to move slowly, choice to not be the strongest person in the room. Healing doesn't mean erasing your resilience. It means no longer being trapped by it. You can still be capable without being consumed by responsibility. You can still be caring without abandoning yourself. You can still be strong, but not alone. The child who grew up too fast doesn't need to be fixed. They need to be met with patience, met with gentleness, met with permission to grow at a pace that finally feels safe. And maybe healing isn't about reclaiming the childhood you lost. Maybe it's about creating, for the first time, a life where you no longer have to grow up alone, where strength becomes a choice, not a requirement, where rest is allowed to exist without guilt, where you are valued not for what you carry, but simply for being here. And in that space, something soft begins to return. Not the child you were, but the child you were never allowed to be. And this time, they don't have to disappear to survive.